Welcome back. How was the trip?
Smooth sailing. Presby's pretty nice. I might have to pick up some day shifts over there.
I know you've directed on Animal Kingdom, you've directed on other shows before, but how important was it that Abbott not be present for much of this stretch so you could focus solely on the task at hand?
That's a really good question. When we were filming episode 15 of season 1, John was directing, and I had just directed Rescue High Surf. And that episode aired, and he thanked me, and we were talking about it. And then he looked around the set, and he said, "Would you ever want to direct this?" And I was so focused on Abbott at that moment because he had a lot to do, and the medical was just spinning me out. And so I said, "Well, I don't know if I could do both." And then I went home that night, and I thought, wait a minute, did I just talk myself out of a job?
Dr. Abbott's funny. Trust me, his charm wears off.
No, it doesn't.
So I called him that night, and I said, I would totally do it. I would just have to really work hard at the Abbott stuff. So when 9 came along, I was, as you said, thrilled that Abbott doesn't show up till the very end.
You got this?
No, I got it.
Yep.
It's 4th of July. Viewers have been bracing for the inevitable fireworks injury. And then Jude comes in with several missing fingers. What was your reaction the first time you saw that injury practically staged? And how do you direct something that graphic without flinching?
That was a tricky one because we generally cast if they have prosthetics early on before we know what the actual scenes are. But it turned out because Jude has to move his finger, we didn't end up doing that one practically. We taped his fingers with green, and that was something we did with video effects.
You still have your thumb and your most important fingers.
They did build a fantastic model that looked so real. So we used that as our source. And the kid, Anthony, was so terrific.
I'm sorry. Not good enough, Nepo baby. You f***ed up. Don't trust anything or anybody else when the system's down.
When Garcia tells Javati that she effed up and calls her a Nepo baby, the camera lingers on Shabana, and Javati looks a bit like a deer in the headlights. What was important to you about holding on her in that moment?
The show really does a great job of feeling the emotional toll that the work takes on our medical professionals. One thing that I remembered from, again, episode 15, when we were dealing with a big trauma and Robby was crumbling, John did this beautiful pass, and in the edit, of keeping in Robby's point of view, and really, he wasn't focused on the medicine, and it was kind of happening around him. I thought with Javati, this was a real screw up on her end, and one of her probably first, somebody that's been very successful in what she's done throughout. She's so bright and has such a keen understanding of what she's doing, and this was her mistake. So through that trauma, I stole from John this idea of just really, the medicine is happening, but we're focusing on her in a way that we don't normally do. That was a lot of fun. I got to, Shabana has whacked me a couple of times on social media, so it was nice to be able to see her have a little egg on her face.
I have seen the boomer memes.
Do you need anything?
A time machine?
The scene between McKay and Roxy talking about death and dying is so incredibly delicate.
Do you believe in God? I like the concept.
With a moment like that, how conscious are you of making sure the camera never becomes a character in and of itself?
On this show, we don't really bang outside of the room and do like a wide, and because this moment is so sacred, and she's making this decision to be here in this very busy ER, a lot of thought went into how to kind of tackle that. It's such a performance-based scene.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of death. I've seen my share.
But I did want to make sure that we had this feeling of what was happening around in that end moment where there's this sort of wide shot that you can hear everything outside. but inside that room, it's dark. It's different than we've seen it, and incredibly intimate between McKay and Roxy.
I need advice. I've never died before.
Abbott clearly has a sense that Robby hasn't done the work to heal and questions whether he can handle being alone with his thoughts for 3 months.
It's gonna be a lot of time to self-reflect. Sure you can handle that?
How aware do you think Abbott is of just how dark things have gotten for Robby since that night he found him on the roof?
I don't think Abbott is as aware as some of the others. I think Dana is really, understanding a little bit more of what Robbie's up to. I think Abbott, this is sort of the beginning of, he, of course, understands that Robby isn't doing the work. Noah and I talked a lot about this scene between Abbott and Robby, and he mentioned that, this being around 4 o'clock when that scene occurs.
I'm out of here, man. I gotta be back in a few hours for my shift.
It was kind of like a bell goes off for Robby that this is the beginning of my goodbyes.
Why, if I don't see you? Really doing this still.
If my plan is maybe I'm not going to come back, or I'm going to do something really self-destructive, this is the first one. So we made sure to kind of clock Abbott in sort of reading him.
You just make sure you come back. And if it gets dark, you call me. You listening?
That starts an arc for Abbott that we kind of come back to later. And for Robby, it is the beginning of the goodbye parade, and it sort of dovetails right into that scene with Whitaker. And we start to see Robby how he attacks that scene. First of all, it's like the mentor, proud of his student who's now a doctor.
You can just call me Whitaker.
Not a chance. You earned that. I'm proud of you.
And then there's a little bit of a lesson in there in his own Robby way, where he helps Whitaker come to this understanding of boundaries.
What about her friends and family?
Yeah, they're around.
Supporting her?
Without really telling him exactly what that is.
Yeah, I think they try to, but mostly she's just leaning on me.
But then there's this glimmer at the end where he says, and if I don't come back, you'll have a swinging bachelor pad.
If I don't come back, you got a swinging bachelor pad.
Okay.
I love his performance, both of their performances. I think it's a great scene. I think it's beautifully written. But for Robby, it's an a tiny unhinged moment. His energy there is different, and it makes the audience say, wait a minute, what is really going on here? There's not a lot to, in terms of helping Noah or directing Noah. It's like the guy, he knows what he's doing. But that was one of the opportunities where because I wasn't sure about how we wanted this line to be received. Is he unhinged? Is he making a joke? Is he serious? So that was one of the ones where I was like, let's try this. Let's try it. Like maybe the one thing throughout the whole episode where we kind of played around, because every instinct of Noah's is always just, yep, we can move on.
I have a surprise for you. Oh. Sorry.
I want to circle back to 207 for a moment. I talked to Scott Gemmell for that one. He specifically described the Abbott Samira scene in 207 as, quote, throwing a flower to the crowd. What did you make of that dynamic? And did that scene between Abbott and Samira reveal anything about their relationship or about those two characters that maybe even surprised you?
So Uber to his house.
Is the hospital gonna pay for that?
I'll pay for it.
I just enjoyed the way it was presented. It could have kind of leaned into this flirtation, which there was such a subtlety to it, even though he's standing there with his shirt off.
What are you doing?
What you clearly can't.
The dynamic, it presents a lot of questions rather than answers. It just sort of, it keeps the audience interested in knowing more, which this show does really well. It gives these pops of point of view where, we just want more of it, because this dynamic it's an interesting one, and I think the fans are happy with it, and I'm glad that Scott decided to throw a flower.